I just happened to get some multicam fabric in the mail today, so I'm pretty excited and I'm ready to get started. So if you guys are too, let's get to it. So first things first, you're going to need a sewing machine. And you're also gonna need some material. I happen to use the multicam fabric for this tutorial. You're also gonna need a decent sized spool of thread, preferably one that is made out of either nylon or polyester. Something synthetic is the preferable choice. Next, you're also gonna need a pair of scissors to make sure that you can get your cuts just exactly the way you want them. So let me just be the first one to say it that, yeah, the sewing machine, not such a manly thing, at least traditionally. But it's a very empowering tool, and it's actually a pretty excellent way to prep for the future because, you know, there's not gonna be many Old Navies or Kohl's out there anymore if the poo-poo hits the fan. So knowing how to work with fabric and work with a machine and putting fabrics together, they're gonna be a very integral part of your life after the fact, and knowing how to work with material and piece them together, not only is it a valuable skill to have, but it's pretty empowering knowing that you can quite literally make all of your own gear. So the first thing you're going to want to do is cut your fabric to length. Most people find it optimal to sleep in a hammock that's somewhere between 10 and 11 total feet. Next up, you have to roll and sew your edges. If you don't, the edges will eventually become frayed and it'll just start to kind of fall apart on you. So rolling and sewing your edges are pretty crucial. I would happen to personally recommend that you sew your long edges first and then your short edges last. I'm not going to cover actually how to roll and sew your hems in this tutorial, because there is already a ton of information out there on the interwebs for you to investigate and find out for yourself. But giving yourself this nice finished edge will make you appreciate your project a whole lot more. So just a little tip here, for those of you that may not be so good at the sewing thing, just take it slow. Be as careful as you possibly can. You want those edges to look good. You want to be proud of your work. And sometimes just slowing the whole process down, really making sure that you've got all your hems exactly the way they ought to be, really goes a long way in making your final product as good looking as it possibly can be. Once you get all your edges done though, you're going to want to create yourself a channel on each of the short ends. Somewhere between 2 and 3 inches is going to be perfectly fine. Next, you're going to want to sew the entire channel, not once, not twice, but 3 total times to reinforce that hem. Now there are lots of different ways in order to whip the end of your hammock, but I choose to just keep it as simple as possible. But just in case you're wondering, here's a couple of different ways. You can simply hold one end and begin to slowly gather the material onto itself. And you simply wrap your cord around the end of the fabric to hold it in place. Simple enough. Another way that you can do it is you can begin to create basically V's back and forth until you have all the material gathered together, and then you whip the end of the material like that. Yet another way is to basically fold the material in on itself several times, first in half, then in quarters, and then in eighths, in order to get your gathered in bundle. Ultimately, I just opted to go straight through the channel that I had sewn earlier, using a continuous loop and lark's head in it directly on. There are a couple of other ways that you can whip the end of your hammock. You can simply take the end of your hammock, take yourself a continuous loop, and just simply lark's head it on. This will essentially cinch it up and not allow the continuous loop to slip off the end. The next whipping method is to run a loop turner all the way through the channel that you've sewn. Grab yourself a piece of string, 550 cord, mason's line, what have you. Then you're going to pull it through the channel, just like you would any other whipped end. And you get it all the way through. You're going to want to basically create a ball of fabric on the end by tying a series of overhand knots. First in the front, and then twisting it around to the back. Pulling it nice and taut. You bring it back around to the front to finish off the whipping. Tie yourself a couple of overhand knots to make sure that it's good and secure. And once you get that done, you take a pair of scissors and cut the line off extremely close next to the hammock. Next, you take either your whoopee sling or your continuous loop and simply lark's head it on to your hammock just below the knots that you just made. And finally, when you're all done with all your hard work, go out immediately, find the 2 nearest trees, strap this sucker up, and enjoy all your hard work. So there you have it, and there you go, folks. I hope you found all this information useful and handy for all your purposes and needs. And if you did, a thumbs up, perhaps a share, or even a channel subscription would be nice. That would be pretty cool. At any rate, thanks for stopping by here at Black Raven Survival. I'm your host, Mark Puckett. I'll see you guys on the next one.